it became clear that he had spent so much time and energy on the visual design of the creature and the sculpting, and he sculpted the maquettes himself. Like he really got in with the production design team that was working on the creature and really did it with him. Was there a similar involvement for him with the sound of the creature? Because I can imagine that must have been equally important to him.
At first, no. It evolved though. I mean, yeah. At first, there was a lot of room to breathe. It's in the script. We know what this guy's meant to be. He's not a monster. He's a creature. He's an entity, and he's a romantic lead. And so that was all kind of like laid out in the first meeting. He touched on that, but he knew he didn't need to elaborate any more than the script already had. It would be a waste of time, and so it was kind of just a blank slate. For me personally, I knew that the audience would need to relate with this guy. He had to be a romantic lead. He had to be something that we can identify with.
If the love story doesn't work, there's no movie.
Well, that's exactly right. And so, in order to sort of meet the audience in the middle, right? Because you're asking a lot of the audience to get them to empathize with and be kind of on board with this beautiful relationship that develops between him and Eliza. Really the best way to start was with humanoid sounds. And so ultimately I wanted him to sound unusual and without being alien. I didn't want him to sound inhuman. And so I started with my own voice and then added animal sweeteners to that, some recordings to honor the gills, like the liquid rolling in his gills, because a lot of that is built into the script and the design and everything that you sort of touched on in terms of how much work went into building this creature. And then we, for Final Pass, brought Guillermo in, and he gave us a sort of breathing respiratory layer that sort of, once all of that got in there, and there a lot of massage went into that track, wide track, you wound up with something that sounded like a humanoid, a believable, convincing, inventive entity, a personality, right?
Guillermo talked early on, like from our first meeting, about vocabulary and about the conversation went very quickly from what voice artist are we going to get to voice the creature to Nathan providing tests using his own voice, and the riddle was solved, right?
Immediate approval.
Immediate. No voice. We had our voice artist.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And he's here.
Yeah.
Right.
So did you got into SAG because of that?
I wish. I did get credited. Guillermo and I were credited for voice the creature.
So, but there's partially Guillermo's voice as well.
It is.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, and this is what I mean. Like when I say that, the process with him evolved. I should say with them, because it was with Guillermo and with Sydney and with Cam. You know what I mean? That process evolved over time from being just sort of like, let's throw it at the wall and see if it sticks. You know what I mean? Well, hey, it's stuck. Now let's work on it. When I started bringing my system in to work with them in person, that's when the vocabulary started to expand. Because when you focus on a single scene, you can really deck out one scene and detail it out and make it sound pretty and add every little steam hiss and, create reverbs. But then when it's time to do the whole movie, you kind of have to broad strokes it, right? And so, in the beginning, it was just like a one long pass of straight performance. And I played that for them, and it was missing so much because it's a single layer. It's a single channel of a creature that would ultimately become 64 tracks wide, you know what I mean? And so they, I think that they got it though pretty quickly, because the notes I was getting back was, okay, so in this scene, the emotion isn't quite what we were going for. Like when Strickland comes in to torture him and Eliza runs behind the banks. At first, I wasn't sure if he was angry. It was one of those rare situations.
You're talking about the emotional state of the
exactly,
of
and so
Fishman.
Arthur's emotional state.
Yeah.
I should probably stop saying that in case that's like rabidly against what Guillermo would want. But yeah, in almost every single case, I mean, you got to tip your hat to Doug Jones's physical performance of that creature. In a few.
Doug Jones was the actor in the rubber suit.
He was in the rubber suit, yeah.
Okay.
And so, and he did it flawlessly. but there are some emotions that you can play physically that could be read one of two ways. And occasionally I would read it wrong. And so that was the use of that sort of first really vague, way too much leash zone where I could just be as creative as I wanted to be. The leash started getting pulled in once we started playing that stuff back. He could, Guillermo could help me like, no, this is really what we're going for here. I like this, I don't like that. And so I could make those tweaks. And then it was all about sort of, okay, now how do we give him range? How do we give him new words, new expressions, new ways to convey and express himself so that we know where he's coming from?